So it's been about 2 months since Wind and Truth came out, and it's been about 2 months since I finished Wind and Truth because I read it really quickly. And I want to share two thoughts. I recorded a video a minute ago and it's like 12 minutes long. That's probably too long. I want to share two thoughts about Wind and Truth and how I'm thinking about that and how it might help you process some of these things. So if you haven't watched Wind and Truth, don't watch this video. I'm not going to spoil any specific points, but just save it and come back for later. Okay, two thoughts. Number one is about the Wheel of Time. If you've not read the Wheel of Time, it's a gigantic book series, 15 books. Obviously, Brandon Sanderson finished the Wheel of Time, but he loves the Wheel of Time. It's the inspiration for his writing of Stormlight Archive. Like, it's clear through reading that there's so much inspiration that he's drawing from that story. And in that story, things start out really small, they get really, really, really expansive, and then ultimately they have to come back together for this big cataclysmic event. And it takes 15 books to do that. And there's this segment after like the Fires of Heaven. There's like 4-ish books that people call the slog. Now, I don't think that it's actually like a bad slog, but it is a slowing down of sorts. And I understand why people might say that. And I think that in Stormlight Archive, because there's only 10 books in these sort of 2 arc series, that Sanderson is going to skip the slog. I think that Wind and Truth ends in a way, and really the whole book sets up this whole thing where he's going to skip all of the slog because so many things happened to characters, to storylines, setting up for new things. It was overwhelming, all the things that happened inside of Wind and Truth. He's going to skip the slog, and book 6 is going to take off like a rocket ship. We've got a time jump, we've got a lot to catch up on, and there's going to be a lot that has happened and is happening on Roshar and on the Cosmere. And I think that he sees, I don't have 15 books. He gave himself 10 books. I don't know why he said that. He could have done something else, but he gave himself 10 books to finish this series. And so I think he's going to skip the slog. Idea number 2 is how I'm thinking about Wind and Truth. And I shared this with some of my Discord book friends the other day, and I think that Wind and Truth is the world's longest novella, because it feels so different from the other 4 mainline Stormlight books. But it kind of feels like a novella in a way, in that obviously it's not short, and novellas are generally short, but novellas also just communicate a really quick and specific idea. And that's what happened in Wind and Truth. Some really quick and specific things happened. They happened over a lot of pages, and there were a lot of specific and quick things, but all of it happened in 10 days. Like, it was very realistic in the Jack Bauer 24-esque style, day 1, day 2, like you're picking right back up, and it was pretty wild. So I think that when I think about Wind and Truth as kind of the connection from Rhythm of War, right? We get this sort of, we get a really good Sanderlanche ending of Rhythm of War. There was a lot of kind of slowdown and science development and plot development in that book. And then there was a big cataclysmic ending that led to, hey, we're going to do this Contest of Champions in 10 days. And then Wind and Truth, 10 days. Like, that's it. And so I think about Wind and Truth right now, like, my framing on it is, oh, it's just a really long novella that resets the board, sets up things for the next opportunity, shuffles things around, and now we're going to jump into book 6. So in a lot of ways, it's like The Way of Kings. Then you should read Warbreaker, which is not in the Stormlight Archive, but is an important book for many characters and connections. So it's kind of like a novella. Then there's Words of Radiance, then there's Edge Dancer about Lift, then there's Oathbringer, then there's Dawnshard, which is very important. Again, a quick novella, pretty easy, but a pretty important thing that they go and explore and get. And then you've got Rhythm of War, and then the ending of Rhythm of War leads you right into Wind and Truth. It's kind of like a novella, right? It's really long. I mean, it's not a quick read by any means, but it is a really specific read. And in a lot of ways, I thought that he was going to do like 2/3 of the book would be leading up to the Contest of Champions. That event would take a lot longer. And then the outcome of that and the outworkings of that would be the rest of the book, and that there would be this Sanderlanche of like figuring out what to do with the ramifications of that contest. But all that happened in like a couple pages, a couple chapters at the end. It just kind of climbed all the way to the end and was like, well, there's the end, and here's what's happened, and here's where we are. And there was some obviously like emotion and depth about that, but ultimately it was a pretty quick read time wise, right? We're not taking months, we're not taking years, we are taking hours. And that's why it feels kind of like a novella, and it feels different than the other 4 mainline Stormlight books. And I think it's fair to like have criticism about that and thought about that and wonder like, is this good? But I've seen a lot of people really, really hate Wind and Truth, and I get, like, I've heard their points and I get it. But I think for me, when I reframe that to, oh, it's just like a really long novella. It's just a really long telling of the outcome of the end of Rhythm of War. Because at the end of Rhythm of War, everything is set, right? 10 days, Contest of Champions, the fate of Roshar. What happens in Wind and Truth? Those things. That's all that happened. Like, that's all. And so it kind of feels like a long novella. I don't know, maybe that's helpful for you to think through those things. But I think when I think about the stylistic choices that Sanderson makes, this isn't about like the writing or the characters or the world building or any of that stuff. This is like functional choices that he's making. 10 books instead of 15. So it's different from the Wheel of Time, but there's so much in the Wheel of Time that he's pulling from. He's got to do something to flip that. What did he do? Write the world's longest novella. I don't know. Maybe that's helpful for you. I go back and forth about what I feel about Wind and Truth, because it was an incredible book, and there were some incredible moments that will stick with me forever. But it wasn't as good, right? Good, whatever good means. It wasn't the same as my experience, especially reading the first 3 books. And I loved Rhythm of War, so it was different than that too. So I don't know. Maybe that helps you. Maybe that reframing and thinking about just the structure and the physicality of what he is doing with printing demands and needs and all the things that are happening. So is that helpful? I don't know. Maybe. But, I've been reading a lot of books. I'm on a journey to read 1,000 books over the next decade, and I am like well over 300 into that goal. So it's pretty exciting, and I'm excited to keep reading, and I'm excited to keep reading more of Sanderson's work as it comes out. I am currently Cosmere complete. I am up to date on all things Cosmere, and that feels pretty good. So I can't wait to read. I need to read some more of his non-Cosmere books, but in the Cosmere, I have done them all, and so I'm excited to read more for that in the year, reread things in the years to come, and I can't wait to see where it goes.